Hello and welcome to the Give Me the Remote podcast. It is episode 54 and it is Wednesday, the 4th of December 2019. My name's Sheridan and I'm joined in the pod by John.
Hello, everyone. And yes, the month of November never happened. So here we are in December, all raring to wrap the year up for you.
I feel as though November in Australia is just a tsunami of crap that falls on you as any sort of worker.
This is as opposed to the tsunami of crap that is December.
Yeah, but by about this point in December, we're starting to see the end.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely week before Christmas, it's going to be chillaxing.
Chillaxing, huh? All right. Now, we have actually been very busy watching a lot of shows, but because this is the new model of 2019, they're all weekly release. And so we need to wait slowly.
It's funny that they've gone back to weekly release. Like, why wouldn't they maybe go to, I don't know, 4-day release?
Oh, just because people's heads work in weeks. Can you imagine the chaos if they did a 4-daily release?
But it doesn't really...
You just want to know that Tuesday's the day you watch, or Monday for us is the day we watch Watchmen, you know?
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter because you can watch it any day of the week.
Yeah, but for timing a new release, and it does keep the buzz going, and because, I mean, one thing you don't get with a show that you just dump the whole lot at is you don't get weekly recaps.
No.
You don't...
My pet hate is not having not having recaps in shows. They should all
No,
have
I mean third-party weekly recaps. I mean, all the hundreds of websites writing, this is what happened in Watchmen, and this is the significance of Petey's scratching his fingernail, and
yeah.
So if you've got a show that you think is going to generate huge third-party buzz, then that's why you don't release it all in one go.
What about every 2 weeks?
Wow, people would really hate that.
Just saying, just try something different.
Sure, you can risk hundreds of millions of dollars on that idea.
I wouldn't make a good TV executive.
No. Okay, what are we going to talk about first?
Ooh, so many things.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start off with the biggie. The Crown.
The Crown.
Gather around, people, wherever you roam.
On days like today, ask yourself, in the time I've been on the throne, what have I actually achieved?
For the times they are a-changing.
Season 3.
New cast.
New cast. Olivia Colman. Look, I'm a big Olivia Colman fan. I'm going to put it out there.
Best thing she's ever done.
No.
Don't like it.
It's not that I don't like it. I just actually felt this series wasn't really about the Queen.
The supporting roles, yeah, she mostly just sat at a desk looking
She
unamused.
looks basically unhappy the entire time. Like, oh, what are these douchebags doing again now?
Except when she tries to trot off and travel the world horse racing.
And then she looks happy.
Yes, and then she has to deal with people being douchebags back home. Yeah.
Helena Bonham Carter as Margaret is the absolute highlight.
Yeah, she's good. I met Princess Margaret in her dotage, and
I know you did. You tell the story.
No, I'm not going to tell the story. I'm just going to leave it out
Why?
there mysterious. But I have a very dim view of her as a result.
Why won't you tell the story?
Well, I'm saving it up.
For when?
I don't know, some other time.
What, you're not going to tell the 20 people that listen to this?
Nope.
I reckon you can trot it out again.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Not putting that one out there here. Anyway, Princess Margaret, what a piece of work. But very well played by Helena Bonham Carter in this. In what is, they sort of got Ms. Bonham Carter in the last moment where she could play the youthful aspect of this role.
Helena Bonham Carter does have very good skin, though.
Yes.
But I feel sorry for Margaret.
They haven't... Well, I mean, did you feel sorry for her or her husband in that whole business?
I didn't feel sorry for her husband. Her husband was a douche.
She was kind of unpleasant to be around. She was physically violent and abusive.
I reckon he was also... he was a philanderer and a bit of a drunk.
Was he a philanderer?
And also...
yeah.
He kind of just goes with her for the name. So
he was already a
used
lord
her.
in his own right.
It's not really the same as being a princess, though, is it?
Well, he wasn't a princess, was he?
No, but she was.
Hmm.
I actually thought another highlight of the show was Prince Charles.
Yeah.
I thought that young actor Josh O'Connor, who has no meaning to me whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I think he played like someone in Les Miserables in the BBC show.
I think Charles was the real star of this season.
I really thought he played him just really well.
Yeah, and they set the scenes with Camilla for the start of what is one of the great love stories of the 20th century.
He got all the mannerisms right. He got his sort of voice right. And he's quite an attractive young man, but he really looked like Charles, who was not that attractive. Although I guess Charles was not actually completely ugly when he was young.
Look, I mean, Charles was... He was sort of lucky he was born a prince, because life would have been quite hard for him if he'd been born into the lower classes with his delicate sensibilities.
He played him... I mean, I think... The Crown talking about how they hate this. I mean, Prince Charles in this looks pretty good. How he goes to Wales and learns Welsh and...
Yeah, I mean, but he's not the cool prince. He's literally, he wants to... he's in this miserable dorm and he walks past the door and someone's got some cool music playing and they look him up and down and they just slam the door in
But
his
he
face.
actually comes across as being a genuinely decent person.
Oh, yeah, because we've all been that person in a university dorm where the cool kids are slamming the door in their faces. Even the cool kids in that dorm have had, at some point in their life, the cool kids slamming the door in their face.
But how he develops, the friendship with the Welsh guy.
The Welsh nationalist, yeah.
I mean, they make him out to be a pretty nice guy.
Yeah. They do. I mean, I imagine when Diana comes along, we'll see a side of Charles that isn't so pretty, but...
Well, do you think? See, this is why I'm wondering if this is really just propaganda by the Crown.
Look...
Because they go on, oh, we don't like it. But I'm like,
I'm
this
sure-
actually makes them look amazing.
I'm sure they're clever in that the more they voice their disapproval about the show, the more people watch it. And it... Fundamentally, while it... At times, it makes up ugliness about the royal family. Some of the stuff about Mountbatten in this season is just pure fabrication. Some of it is...
But he's not part of the Crown.
Well, he's part of the royal family and he's in
But
this.
extended.
But I'm also going to say the stuff about Prince Philip in season 2, where they made up him being responsible for his sister dying, that's some pretty low stuff for someone who's still alive to have that made up about them.
Yeah.
So the Crown does do some downright mean things to the royal family. The show, The Crown, does some downright mean things to the royal family. I suspect, and I can't speak for them on this, I suspect it's because there are things they know about that they can't talk about, that they're fabricating some things that in their heads make up for it, and I don't like that as an excuse, but I suspect that's what's happening.
This show, though, would have created more monarchists than it has
Absolutely.
Republicans.
Oh, yeah.
So
Like, just
overall, it's
that-
been very positive.
The
for
episode
them.
when Charles goes to Wales, I
Yeah.
remember turning to you and just saying, this damn show. Every time you're feeling a bit of Republican, movement in your bones, you see an episode like that, you're like, oh,
Well, that bit
aren't they
where he
wonderful?
gives
and,
the speech in Welsh, and it's like basically,
and fulfilling the prophecy of Llewellyn as well, but yeah.
yeah, that was just like, oh my god, I nearly became a monarchist.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I love Charles. He's amazing.
Yeah, so it's... You got to take some things with a grain of salt, and there's a whole cottage industry of pointing out things that are wrong in the Crown. So, definitely if you're watching the show, get in on that, because you don't want to swallow everything the show portrays, hook, line and sinker. William Shawcross, one of the absolute groundbreaking journalists about the Vietnam War, has had an angry piece in The Spectator just out today, getting really, really cross about how the Crown fabricates bits and pieces.
But you have to, I mean, if you're dealing with such a rich history over such an extended period of time, you have to truncate things for the narrative.
I get that.
You just got to.
I get that. Well, I think there is no history nerd. History nerds love pointing out their perceived errors in other people's words. It's like Tolkien nerds picking apart Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings as if they can ever hope for a better theatrical adaptation of that book. They're insane to think they can, but they still pick away. And similarly, history buffs, particularly ones with a deep knowledge of the royal family, are just desperate for anyone to come to them and say, tell us about your knowledge of this period, and then they've got to show off by tearing someone else down. That's just life. Fundamentally, it is quite good history. You will learn things. I learned things watching it, and I thought I knew this period of history extremely well. but I would say take it with a grain of salt, and anything that you're thinking you're going to trot out as a fact in conversation with other people, you should definitely do some independent verification of.
One thing that perhaps is just a little bit of a letdown for this season is it's not really one continuous narrative.
But even Crown Season 2 was very much getting into the Adventures of Scooby-Doo territory of, Adventure of the Week.
Yeah, it kind of jumps around a bit. And, I mean, in some ways I actually didn't mind it at times because you kind of have, there's episodes that are about Philip and episodes about Charles, and it kind of gave you a broader picture of the royal family. Rather than just being this singular narrative focused on the crown.
Yeah. But let's talk about what's great in it. Princess Anne. Fantastic.
Oh, Princess Anne is great. Love her.
She must be just watching this, loving it, saying to the family, hey,
I
check
actually
me out.
I'm like, I've turned into a bit of a fangirl.
Yeah.
The horses, though.
Yeah. Charles Dance's turn as Mountbatten is amazing. Now, having said that, as my family is definitely part of. Yeah, we're literally historic spear carriers for Mountbatten, so we're not too happy about the way he's portrayed and some of the things that definitely did not happen that they've shown portraying him in bad light here.
They haven't portrayed, that he was a pedophile.
Well, that's because that's not proven,
Sheridan. Well, but I mean that allegation is out there.
Let's move on from that.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Well, he's dead, so he's very long dead, so you're not going to get pinged for defamation on that.
I'm not fucking with those people.
Yeah. Anyway, my point is that while you can disagree with the historic portrayal of Mountbatten and the plot treatment of him, Charles Dance's performance of the character is magnificent.
Well, he's an awesome actor.
He is, and it's a good character, and he really breathes into it, whereas the portrayal of the slightly younger Mountbatten in the first couple of seasons, there wasn't much to work with, and the actor did a no more than workmanlike job, but in this, Charles Dance really delivers. You liked Charles?
I really liked Charles. I thought he was the best out of all of it. To be honest with you, though, and you know this, but I actually think the Charles Camilla love story in real life is a really beautiful love story.
Yeah, I stole that line from you about 10 minutes ago. That's okay.
But I'm just...
Because I'd heard you say it before and I just dropped it in there and then I thought... I just think
everyone gives him so much grief. But Diana was an extremely complicated and probably difficult woman. And he didn't screw around with heaps of women.
Well, you don't know that.
Well, I don't, but what it looks like from the outside is that he was in love with Camilla, couldn't marry her, and he maintained a deep yearning for her for a long time, and then when it became an option, he got with her, and I just think it's really nice, and I just feel like they have a genuine love for each other. That is true love.
Yeah, if you accept that Diana was not the star of that story, then the Charles Camilla story becomes a really interesting and sweet one. The problem is, for Charles publicly, is that such a huge number of people were sold on a story sold by the royal family, that Diana was this special superstar, and that they should trust their love to. And then Charles betrays that in their view because they don't know the backstory. And Camilla doesn't come across as particularly sympathetic. I don't think Camilla's ever given a huge number of damns what the public thinks of her either.
No, and I just think
which is fine. There's no reason why anyone should give too many damns what the public thinks of them.
Yeah. But, there's all the whole thing too that Camilla was kind of older and not as attractive and therefore not as appealing. And
they certainly make the Camilla in this quite a racy character.
They do.
You can see why these guys are falling over themselves for her.
Yeah. But anyway, so that fulfilled something for me because, when they don't get together, I found that quite sad.
Yeah. So Helena Bonham Carter you liked?
I think pretty much everyone in it. I really like Tobias Menzies as Philip. He's from, what's that bodice ripping show? Outlander.
And Game of Thrones.
Oh, and Game of Thrones, yeah. He is very main character in Outlander, though.
Yeah, what I love in this is how normally every other role I've seen Tobias Menzies. He's a creepy, sly,
A bit like Prince Philip.
no, somewhat sadistic character. And in this, when I see him on the screen, I expect that, but he actually plays Philip much straighter and with much more physical presence than I thought Tobias Menzies actually had. Which I really like. It's a really good turn in this, and Philip is actually a really interesting character who, aside from some occasional historic liberties at his expense that are grossly unfair, I think this show's done a pretty fair job of bringing that out.
Yeah.
Okay, so Crown Season 3. How many stars?
What are you going to give it?
4.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go 4 too.
I also thought the ending was a little weak.
Oh, the ending was weak. I actually didn't even realise it was over, and that's not good.
It was more like, this isn't the ending, this is just to be continued.
Yeah.
Which, sure, they've got more seasons underway, but I still feel a season finale should.
Well, I think there's some shots that are going around of Diana holding a young Prince William for season 4.
Yeah, right.
So, watch that space.
I
think whoever plays Diana is going to have a hard gig, though. I mean, has anyone really played her in a like a big budget movie though, or TV series? They haven't, have they?
Nothing the size or scope of The Crown, but
no.
they haven't. You know, there's only been 3 or 4 TV series in history the size and scope of The Crown, so there's not.
No,
a lot
but
to
I'm just
compare
saying
with.
she's actually one of those historical figures that.
She's been in a few movies.
Yeah, but they
Diana,
haven't touched.
Princess of Hearts, all that sort of.
They haven't touched on her in a big way.
There was a Charles and Camilla Telly movie that was out a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but this is all rubbish.
Okay.
Tabloidy stuff, like.
Yeah, well. All right then. So what's next?
What do we do living with yourself?
Path of life brings us many troubles. Pain.
We need to talk.
Sadness. Humiliation.
You say you even thinking about dying?
Top Happy Spa will rebuild your DNA better than ever. A better you. The best you can be. That's what I want.
Yes. So this is Paul Rudd being as charming and handsome as Paul Rudd usually is, but with a slight hint of age and decay to him, which I feel humanises him.
I think he's had that going for a while.
Anyway, so the basic plot, I don't think this is too spoiler because it's in the trailer and it's first episode. Paul's struggling with family and career, and someone at his work says, hey, I know a way you can totally turn your life around and revitalise yourself. And he has to go to this dodgy clinic and he pays them $60,000 in cash, which he has to, of course, loot his wife's bank account to raise the cash. And he wakes up feeling amazing, and then it turns out that they cloned him and killed the original him and made the clone better. But it turned out they had failed to kill the original him, so now there's 2 of them.
That's pretty much the story.
Well, that's the setup.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's got to navigate with his original self, who's tired and old and falling apart, and his newer, funnier, better, just like him, but him when he was younger, self, who his wife really digs. And then trying to keep it secret from the wife, and shenanigans ensue and all that sort of thing.
Yes.
Anything else you want to say?
Well, sorry, I thought you were still recapping.
No,
the story.
I'm kind of, and that's they take it from there. I mean, that all pretty much happens in the first half hour of the first episode. But what I loved about this show, and I think because it's had some horrible reviews, and what I think the reviewers are just a little too young, and haven't quite dealt with enough.
As a middle-aged person, I related to this show really well.
Yeah. I think if you're a young TV reviewer in your 20s, everything this show is talking about is meaningless and is just tired, defeated people. And you put another decade on and become one of those tired, maybe not completely defeated, but have known some defeats people. And this show talks to you.
I mean, it's essentially is a story about being middle-aged, in that the 2 main narratives are about his relationship with his wife and his job.
Yeah, and himself to the point where they literally have his ego and alter ego as two separate physical presences on screen.
Yeah, I mean...
In terms of taking your psychological metaphors and writing them large, it doesn't get much bigger than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of one of those things that you evaluate, like, your failings as a human when you get to be that age. And, like, for example, the relationship. So she falls in love with the perfect version for a while.
Well, why wouldn't she?
Well, exactly. And
He tells the same stories, but better.
Who's in a middle-aged relationship has gone, why isn't my partner better at blah?
Yeah. Or why aren't they even as good as they were when I met them?
Yeah. And... But you kind of ends up realising that, you know, none of that is really perfect or solving all of your problems either. So it's sort of depressing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but I think as a drama exploring these issues now the characters can't really be much more than their mid-30s because they're still talking about having kids a lot. But possibly pushing 30. I felt them as 40-somethings myself.
Personally, I think Paul Rudd's character in it is early 40s and she's late 30s.
Yeah, okay. I can live with that. And that's a fantastic performance by her as well.
Yeah. What's her name? Aisling B. I don't know who she is.
I don't know, but she's good and I'd look for her in
Maybe
other
it's
things.
Ailing B.
I think it's Ailing, yeah. One to look for because she's just fantastic in this. All sorts of things to like. I mean, yes, advertising and architecture are probably slightly glamour professions, but it's all very relatable.
Yeah.
Their house, it's a nice big house in what looks like a nice suburb, but it's not like I don't have friends who've got houses like that.
Yeah.
So it's very realistic. There's some exciting twists and turns. There's some quite good laughs along the way.
Yeah, it's funny.
And
I think maybe it pushes the concept a little far. Like, I was sort of done with it. But I was done with it.
You could have done this as a 2-hour movie back in the day.
I think actually that probably would have been preferable.
Yeah, as it is, it can draw some of the arcs of their lives out further.
Yeah.
And that's the advantage of this form of television.
Perhaps I think maybe making... I don't know, it would have been better if there was a more extensive supporting cast. Some subplots that kind of held it up a bit, I don't know.
Yeah, the supporting cast is pretty thin. I mean, there's some people at his work. One particular guy is not very nice. The side quest of the FDA, side quest is the wrong word, but there's a digression with the Food and Drug Administration anti-cloning task force. That's very funny.
Yeah.
There are subplots to it. Not side quests, but subplots. He's got some subplots that go well. I don't know if there's going to be more, but I kind of hope they let...
No, I think it's... If they do any more, there's no more to go.
Yeah, it's wound up. Which I think that would be great if that was just a piece of television that just lives like this. But yeah, so the kids don't like it because it's not about them, and frankly, if you're a 20-something, every piece of TV out there you'd think is just made for you naturally these days.
It's a bit harsh.
Well, because all the high school stuff is still relatable to them, and yeah.
I think it's very demeaning to young people.
Well, they don't listen to our podcast anyway. So.
How many stars?
Let's talk to us all tired buggers. As someone old, tired, and has known a few defeats, I think it's finally great to see some TV that I can truly relate to. So I'm going to give it 4 stars.
I'm going to give it 3 stars.
Okay, what you docking the star for? Well, 2 stars, in fact.
I felt like it just went on a bit, and it just didn't have a lot of depth to it, and it just should have been shorter.
Okay. So what's next?
Let's go Australian with Total Control.
Reluctant national hero Alexandra Irving has been sworn in today as a senator for Queensland.
Inspired choice or a desperate publicity stunt?
The party has lost its way.
Yeah, now this is the best political drama set in Canberra I have seen, and I think there's been 5 or 6 in recent years, which is really unusual. They used to never see political drama set in Canberra, and then House of Cards came out, and all the local TV producers like, oh, we can do something in Canberra.
I think actually too, what they probably realised is actually reasonably cheap to film here.
Yeah, and ACT film, bends over backwards. They had amazing access to Parliament House in this, though. I've never seen a show have so much access to inside Parliament House.
Okay, can we just talk about that for a second,
They
though?
don't use the chamber.
So, they do this, and this is, it makes no sense. And I've thought about this, and I've thought, if I didn't know what Parliament House looked like, would it make no sense? And yes, it would make no sense. So,
That made no sense.
in Canberra, for those who don't know, we built new Parliament House, which is our current Parliament House, in 1988. It opened. But we also have Old Parliament House, which is our first Parliament. Which
was built as the Provisional Parliament House and then served from, I think, 1926 to 1988.
So Old Parliament House looks like a building that was built in 1922. New Parliament House looks like a building that was built in 1988. So they're quite different. New Parliament House has a lot of steel and marble and big foyers and glass and whiteness and postmodern architecture. Old Parliament House has a lot of timber and carpet. And so what they do is they film the external, like when they're walking around in Parliament House, that's all
The
filmed.
corridor shots
are
in the real Australian Parliament
They're
House.
in New Parliament House, but then when they're in the chamber sitting, they're in Old Parliament House. And it is quite clear to anybody, with even the most basic understanding of architecture and interior design, that these are two very different buildings.
Yeah, there's a couple of points there. One is that simply, possibly the ABC should just build a set of the modern chamber of Parliament House.
This is the sad state of affairs, though. The ABC clearly doesn't have money to do that. But what I don't understand...
But my point is that if they built that set, they could be using it for the next 100 years. It would be a relatively small investment for something that they could use in TV news. There's a lot of... and they could be renting it to everyone else who wants to do something. It's just something that would be a really useful TV set to have on a lot somewhere.
What I don't understand, though, is how they got all this access to the corridors when they couldn't just film inside. There must be a rule.
No, I say this as someone who worked in New Parliament House, as you call it, for 8 years. I don't have any inside knowledge of what happened here, but what I can say is that access to the chamber is, for a lot of very serious and quite valid reasons, extremely limited. And as we know, when our friend Leon came in and talked about shooting Rake in Old Parliament House as the parliamentary chambers, which did pretty much the same thing as this show does.
There must be a rule.
Rake had a really stupid internal reason for why they did it, but in what he was saying is basically it takes all day, and Parliament House is not going to give anything a whole day of exclusive access to the chamber, even in a non-sitting period.
Well, I know, but I find that to be a bit bizarre myself.
Well, you think Parliament House should be closing the chambers to the public so that TV productions can go on? Because that's what they'd have to do.
I know. Yeah, I know, but
Anyway,
I just think it's a bit...
That is why I think I thought it was actually really good that Parliament House gave so much corridor access for the shooting, which would still be quite
real
disruptive.
Weird.
Yeah. And then there's little things like then the office shots are on a set, and there's something so distinct about the Australian Parliament House with just the thickness of everything. The doors are super thick and heavy, and everything is heavy, and then no one can build a set as thick. It all looks flimsy and wrong.
Yeah.
But they do a pretty good job of making it look like an office in Parliament House. Unless you've been in one, you wouldn't realise what they were getting wrong.
So we've gone this far without actually
just talking about the architecture.
What this show's about. So this show is about... so Deborah Malman plays... I forgot her name. Alex. Alex, who is a doctor? Nurse.
Is she?
What is she, a doctor or a nurse?
In
Queensland.
She's a Queensland Indigenous remote.
She's an Indigenous woman, and she saves someone from being shot by a gunman. And so she gets a bit of celebrity status, but she's a bit of an activist. She's a good public speaker. And so there becomes a Senate vacancy in Queensland. And so the Conservative Party approaches her to be their replacement senator. And she accepts it.
To what's called in Australia filling a casual vacancy.
And while this is sort of going on concurrently, a 16 or 15-year-old girl Indigenous girl dies in custody, which, for overseas listeners, is a very shameful and real problem we have in Australia with Indigenous
deaths in custody. And they're always framed as suicides.
Or some sort of...
In a terrifying number of cases, they're just the police murdering the Indigenous person.
Yeah, they're either framed as suicides or that it's somehow the Indigenous person's fault for provoking it. And so the kind of story is about how she's trying to uncover the real circumstances behind this Indigenous girl's death. But, there's enough... it's obviously very serious and political, but there's a bit of, there's a few saucy little affairs and...
Yeah, I thought
Alex's
sex life was pretty reckless, frankly. But it was certainly interesting to see a woman of Deborah Mailman's age portraying that.
I actually quite liked that about this character because... So I think what I liked about this character was that... first of all, it's highly unusual to have the main character, actually the two main characters of the show being the female Prime Minister, who's played by Rachel Griffiths, and Alex being women.
Mm-hmm.
It's very unusual in Australia to have the main character be an Indigenous woman, especially of such a mainstream show.
Yep.
And so
Deborah Mailman, though, has built a very solid career to get to this point.
Yeah, I mean, she's an amazing actor. But I think, the tendency is when you have Indigenous people in these roles is that there's, they're tropes, and they're binary.
Yeah, and this character has way more depth and takes you in unexpected directions.
She's an extremely multifaceted character that is flawed and complicated, and you disagree with things she does. She's heroic, all these things. It's a very complex character.
And it's also one of the most... Admittedly, I'm not an Indigenous person, but there's a lot of depth and what strikes, at least it seems real, for ways it depicts... internal Indigenous politics.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting juxtaposition between the way it depicts internal Indigenous politics and Australian national politics. And neither of them comes across as looking particularly good. It's not like it's saying, the Indigenous people are all totally noble. They don't sugarcoat that pill.
Yeah, and I mean, even like her chief of staff, Jonathan, who I don't know the actor that played him, but is a gay young Liberal. And that's quite open, the sexual relationships he has. So I feel like the show actually has quite a lot of diversity, not just with, having an Indigenous character, but there's a lot of other characters in the show that aren't your usual kind of people that you would see in a political drama, but it's actually quite representative of what Parliament is more, like there are people like that this. It's probably somewhat representative of real life.
Oh, I thought the way the staff were depicted and the way the parliamentarians were depicted was obviously slightly over-dramatised. It's not like leadership spills actually happen every day, although the last few years...
The one thing that I have read, which is probably true, is I read a Guardian article that a problem with the show is that when they have this really dramatic moment where they're like, there's going to be a spill motion, it's meant to be high drama, but the majority of Australian audiences will probably go, well, so what? We have these every 3 years or 2 years.
Yeah.
Which is, a sad state of affairs when you can't make a political drama that's more dramatic than real life Parliament.
Yeah, but I thought the characters were not noticeably unrealistic as someone who's spent a sizable chunk of my life in that building. seemed about bang on. The unpleasantness, the pettiness, the nastiness, the using
But
information as
also
a weapon.
just, no one in this show is 100%
some of the old white men are pretty rotten to the core.
True. But there's complexity around most of the characters.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Rachel Griffiths as Prime Minister was probably quite evil.
What did you think of the gratuitous nudity with her?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I don't know what that was about.
Other than showing off that Rachel Griffiths has still got a pretty amazing body for a woman her age, I just could not quite understand why she was...
parading around nude in a bathroom.
Yeah.
True. Didn't think about that.
Yeah. I don't know, unless they put her in the contract, they thought there was going to be a sex scene, that fell through, but they had the nudity in the contract, they're like, well, we may as well use it.
I've got to put it out there. I think we're all a little bit precious sometimes about the tits and ass. People like tits and ass. There definitely needs to be more penises and things.
I don't mind the tits and ass at all. I just felt that one shot was so noticeably out of place and had no motivation for it. It was just, here we go, we're doing this because we can. I kind of felt like they were just trying to one-up the Bodyguard, which had was it the Prime Minister or it was a minister there?
I can't recall.
You don't remember when that sex scene in the Bodyguard? That was quite something.
I wouldn't have put the two of them together.
Okay. I guarantee you the makers of these things do. But, yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so Total Control. If you are interested in seeing, as I said, not a show without flaws, some glaring continuity errors, some settings that probably haven't existed since the 1980s, particularly I'd say the share house in Sydney.
Oh my God.
Probably did exist back in the day, but doesn't exist anymore.
That share house is better than our house.
Yeah, but my point is that places like that did exist in places like Redfern.
Not with that many lanterns.
Yeah, but 30 years ago, there was some cheap real estate.
They
in
didn't
Central
have
Sydney.
such good interior design, though.
Yeah. Anyway, so there are some slightly incongruous things, and that's fine. It's a really thoughtful, entertaining, great show with an Indigenous flavour. And
directed by an Indigenous woman.
Yeah,
too,
and written by
Rachel
Indigenous
Perkins,
people too. Yeah. After I thought Clever Man was a bit of a dud myself.
I agree. Yeah.
And this is actually
not that we have to just have the winners of Indigenous shows.
No, but this one shows that you can write about Indigenous culture and internal Indigenous politics intelligently and in a way that is interesting to a non-Indigenous audience.
Yeah, which shouldn't actually be the test, but yeah.
Oh, I think if it's being broadcast, well, not broadcast, but released for general TV, it's got to work. As entertainment.
Overall, I think this was a really good example of how you can bring on Indigenous writers and storytellers and tell stories that we haven't heard before. That's really interesting.
Can you, off the top of your head, think of a better drama that the ABC has produced in recent times?
In recent times?
Well, ever.
Oh.
Because certainly in the last 10 years, the ABC does some decent panel shows. It does some decent comedy review style shows. I'm thinking,
you probably it's better at satire, for sure.
I think Rake has its moments, but
that essentially is actually
a comedy. Yeah, as drama, I don't think Rake's up to the level of this.
No.
So I think it's really good that the ABC have actually produced a really top-notch drama, and all those Sydney lawyer procedurals, Janet Woods and whatever.
Oh yeah, no, they can go bugger themselves.
Yeah. So well done, ABC. Keep making more of this, and if getting Indigenous storytellers in is the way you actually make good stories, then keep going with that. But
what are you going to give it?
It's just 4 stars. I'm cruising along
I'm going to give it 4 stars.
4-star kind of rut. Okay, what's next?
Bojack Horseman.
Hello, this is a letter. Rehab is making me write a letter to a friend because I guess letter writing is therapeutic. I hear it did wonders for the Zodiac Killer. Anyway, rehab's going fine. God damn.
Bojack Horseman what?
6A.
Season 6A. I've never heard of a season having a 6A before.
Game of Thrones did it, and that's what now everyone can do it.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, they split the last season into 2 seasons.
No, it was still season 7 and season 8.
But it was really season 7A and 7B.
Yeah, well, then they put a huge 2-year gap in between them as well.
True, but anyway, I'm just
Let's
saying.
not get the facts in the way.
They started something.
I think it was more Star Trek Discovery split the first season into
I
2
didn't watch
parts.
Star Trek.
Mm.
So the last season of Bojack?
Well, except for the next 6B.
Yeah.
I wasn't very happy about the long wait for this season of Bojack, and I wasn't very happy about only getting half a season, particularly as there was no warning. You had to Google it. It's not like Netflix was like...
Also, I do have to say, it's a freaking cartoon. They can just make the season.
Yeah.
It's not like they've got to, put friggin' dragons in there.
Yeah. So it's everyone's favourite talking anthropomorphic horse.
He's sober now.
Yeah,
And he is bored.
Yeah, isn't he as boring as everyone else we know who goes sober?
I'm not sure that's fair.
And there's this sense of impending doom and impending dread. You can feel that something horrible's... Maybe they'll... it feels like something horrible's about to
I'll be
to
really,
happen.
really curious how they end this.
Hmm.
Because they can't end it in a happy way.
Well, maybe that'll be the twist that they do, because it's certainly... There's this sense of impending doom all the way through this season. Like, Bojack's just messing around in rehab, while lots of other factors in his life and people in his life are all sort of converging towards a messy crescendo, you feel. I'm also... I've always been thrilled that this is Aaron Paul's post-Breaking Bad gig, because after all the horrible stuff he went through, and you feel that he as an actor lived a lot of that Breaking Bad stuff as well.
Mm.
Although he's back in El Camino.
That's very depressing.
His holiday in Bojack World has got him to a state he can handle that stuff, I guess. But this is the show that has done more for the depiction of depression and the destigmatization of depression, I would say.
Yeah, it's very, very clever.
Than just about anything else I can think of. And it's very funny and very clever. And I do like in this they've introduced the newspaper journalists who are tracking down Bojack's dark past, and you feel that this is going to be part of this horrible cliff that the story is heading towards. But they are depicted as, because the only people who can afford to work in journalism anymore are people whose mummies and daddies have lots and lots of money.
I know, it's
and
very scary.
They portray that beautifully in this. They're champagne swilling.
And the whole single mother thing with
Princess Carolyn.
Princess Carolyn. Is,
Although at least she's a single mother with lots of money.
She has lots of money. I don't know what else to say about it.
You got nothing else to say about Bojack Horseman season 6A?
Look, I feel like it was more of the same. I'm glad it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit worried about how it's going to end. But we thankfully have to wait now for that because of 6A and 6B. Yeah, I've got nothing. It's just Bojack. It's good. I liked it.
Yeah, I'm only going to give it 3 stars, but they're 3 Bojack stars.
I'm going to give it 4 stars.
I think last season of Bojack we gave 5 stars to. And I just felt... Well, for a start, it's not a whole season, so they've sort of... They've walked us halfway up a mountain and then just left us standing half... We're not at the summit.
Do you know I'm going to put something out there to you?
Yeah.
We never rewatch Bojack Horseman.
Yeah, we do.
When?
Oh,
Not in the same way you rewatch Broad City or Peep Show. Or...
No, but we have gone back and rewatched seasons of Bojack.
Purposively, though, not just like, we're bored, we'll just put it on.
I don't know if in this era anyone puts anything on unless they're bored. Because there's always something new to get through.
I'm just putting it out there. I mean, maybe it's just because it is so grim.
Yeah. Yeah, and quite hard going. And there's some episodes you just never want to see again. The ones that are really concepty, like when the whole thing's set under the sea and everyone's talking in fish language. It's like, okay, I'm glad they made something like this, but I don't ever want to watch it again. Which doesn't happen in this season so far, by the way. So, how many stars from you again?
4.
4. Wow, okay. You've overdone me. Do we have any other shows we were doing
We've
tonight?
got no other shows.
No other shows. Okay, so just so you know, we are still watching Watchmen, which is going really well, but we don't want to.
Watchmen.
We don't want to talk about that too much until we get all the way to the end. But I would highly recommend it. It's amazing storytelling every week.
It's really good.
And we're watching a couple of shows on Apple TV. And Apple TV just feels like they've basically brought Sony Pictures and their production into doing long-form television.
Yeah.
Because everything's super glossy and amazingly written and doing really interesting things. So we're watching For All Mankind, that's a play on the Mankind. It's because they're actually making the space program about women. And Morning Wars with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon, which is doing some really, I mean, some of the conversations in that are, it's Scorsese level.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to talk to the fans about, Sheridan?
No, thanks for hanging in there.
Okay. So do please like, share and subscribe and send us emails to gmtrpodcast@gmail.com because without your attention, we get bored and don't do November. And on that note, we're going to say goodnight and thank you very much for listening to us.
Thanks, folks.